There comes a time when the winds of life rise with such force that they strip you bare. They take your shelter, your peace, your sense of place in the world, leaving you standing in the ruins of what was. There are moments when all you have built crumbles, not brick by brick, but all at once, as if the universe itself had conspired to undo you. You look around, searching for what remains, only to find that the hands that once held abundance now tremble in emptiness. It is in this space where the echoes of loss whisper in the hollows of your soul that a great work is unfolding. But the heart does not understand this at first. The mind, frantic and confused, searches for answers, for explanations, for a reason why the road ahead has turned to dust. The spirit, battered and weary, struggles to believe that beyond this devastation, beyond the ashes of all that was, there is something waiting, something greater, something more. But how does one hold on when there is nothing left to hold? How does one rise when the very ground beneath them has vanished? There is a peculiar silence that follows great loss, a silence that wraps itself around the bones, pressing into the skin, sitting heavy on the chest. It is a kind of silence that makes you question whether the world has moved on without you, whether the life you once knew was but a fleeting dream. In that silence, the weight of every tear, every shattered dream, every closed door gathers, pressing into you until you are no longer sure if you can bear it. And yet it is within that silence that the whisper begins. It does not shout, it does not demand, it simply lingers, waiting for you to hear. It is the whisper of something unseen, something working beyond the edges of your understanding. It is the whisper that tells you this emptiness is not your ending, but the clearing of a path, that when your hands are empty, they are finally free to receive, that when the walls have crumbled, the sky above is finally visible. But oh, how the breaking hurts, how it burns, how it stretches you beyond what you thought you could bear. You stand in the wreckage of what was and feel the sting of betrayal, the ache of disappointment, the bitterness of dreams that fell apart just when you thought they would come to pass. The mind, desperate to make sense of it all, asks, why? Why must I lose what I love? Why must I suffer this stripping away? And no answer comes in the way you expect. Because growth never announces itself in comfort. Transformation does not come wrapped in ease. The caterpillar does not glide into its new form. It breaks, it dissolves, it loses itself completely before wings take shape. And so too must you. There is a refining in loss, a purification that only emptiness can bring. When all is taken, you come face to face with yourself, stripped of titles, stripped of certainty, stripped of every false security. You stand raw before the mirror of your soul, and it is in that rawness that truth begins to rise. The truth of what truly matters, the truth of what you are capable of, the truth that you were never meant to stay where you were, that the ground you once stood on was never meant to hold you forever. It is a hard thing to be chosen for more, because to be chosen for more, you must first be pulled away from less. And often that pulling feels like destruction. It feels like punishment. It feels like everything you cherished has been unjustly ripped from your grasp. But in time, oh, in time, you will see that what was taken was never the fullness of what was meant for you. In time, you will understand that losing what was made room for what will be. But for now, you must endure the in-between. The space between the ending and the beginning. The space where nothing makes sense and everything feels uncertain. This is the wilderness where strength is forged, where faith is tested, where resilience is born. It is here in this wilderness that you will discover the depths of who you truly are. It is here that the breaking becomes the making. You must not shrink in this season. You must not believe the lie that all is lost, that you are forgotten, that the best has already passed you by. You must not let despair take root in the soil of your soul. Instead, stand, even in the rubble, stand. Even when you do not understand, stand. Even when it feels as though nothing is working in your favor, hold on, because though your eyes may not yet see it, a foundation is being laid beneath your feet. Though your hands may still tremble from loss, they will soon carry something greater. This is the pattern of the universe. The seed must be buried before it can rise. The night must stretch long before the dawn. The storm must rage before the air clears. And so it is with you. You are being prepared. Your steps are being ordered even when they feel unsteady. You are being stretched even when it feels like breaking. You are being positioned even when it seems like you have been cast aside. Do not fight the process. Do not despise the stripping away. Do not weep so long for what is gone that you fail to see what is coming. For what is coming is greater. What is coming will make sense of every tear, every disappointment, every moment you thought you would not survive. And when that day comes, when the door that was meant for you swings wide, when the abundance that was always yours finds its way into your hands, when the peace you longed for settles over you like a gentle dawn, you will look back at the season of loss and understand. You will see that nothing was truly lost, only shifted, only prepared, only realigned. And you will know with every fiber of your being that when you lost everything, it was only because you were being prepared for more. There is something about losing everything that forces a person to see beyond what their eyes have been trained to believe. It is only in the empty places, in the quiet aftermath, that you begin to recognize how much you had depended on things that were never meant to sustain you. There is a stripping away that happens, a tearing down of everything that was too small to hold the magnitude of who you are meant to become. And though it feels cruel, though it feels unfair, there is a purpose unfolding beneath it all. There was a time when you thought your security came from what you had built, from the stability of your surroundings, from the comfort of what was familiar. You held on to it, believing that as long as you worked hard enough, as long as you followed the path laid before you, it would remain. And then one day, without warning, it was gone. The doors closed, the people left, the certainty you once carried crumbled beneath your feet, and you were left with nothing but the weight of all you had lost. But listen closely, because this is not where your story ends. The illusion had to be shattered so that the truth could emerge. That truth, the one that frightens yet frees you, is this. What you lost was never meant to be the source of your strength. What you lost was never the foundation you were meant to build your life upon. What you lost had to go because something greater is waiting to take its place. Pain has a way of refining a person. It burns away the unnecessary, leaving behind only what is essential. It teaches you to see beyond what is temporary, beyond what the hands can grasp and the eyes can see. It forces you to confront yourself, to ask the questions you had long avoided, to seek answers you never dared to face. And in that seeking, in that breaking, something remarkable begins to happen. You begin to awaken. At first, the awakening is slow. It creeps in through the cracks of your despair, a quiet stirring in the depths of your soul. You may not recognize it at first. You may still be too consumed with grief, too burdened by what has been taken. But slowly, subtly, something shifts. You start to notice that though everything you once relied upon is gone, you are still here. Though the weight of loss pressed hard against you, you did not break. Though you have been stripped of all that was familiar, something within you remains unshaken. But stories do not end in the middle. They do not close on the darkest chapter. They do not stop when the protagonist is struggling, wandering, trying to find their way. No, the story is still unfolding, still stretching toward a climax, still leading toward a resolution you cannot yet see. And you, even in the depths of this in-between place, are still a part of that story. Your loss is not the final sentence. Your struggle is not the last word. You may not see it now, but everything that has fallen apart was necessary. The doors that closed, the paths that vanished, the hands that once held you but now let go, it was all part of the shifting. And though it feels cruel, though it feels unfair, it is clearing the way for something far greater than what you had planned for yourself. But oh, how the waiting hurts. How the silence stretches long and unrelenting, making you question everything you once believed. How the doubts creep in, whispering that maybe you misunderstood, maybe you hoped too much, maybe you dreamed too big. And in those moments, in those long, weary nights, when you feel more lost than found, it is easy to wonder if there's any point in holding on. But hold on. Even when the road is unclear, even when the questions outnumber the answers, even when the weight of uncertainty feels heavier than you can bear, hold on, because though you cannot see it, though you cannot yet feel it, something is shifting beneath the surface. The pieces are moving. The path is being prepared. The doors are being carved from the very walls that once seemed unmovable. What is ahead of you is greater than what is behind you. But you must be willing to walk through the unknown to reach it. You must be willing to trust that the emptiness is not a void, but a clearing. You must be willing to believe that even in the silence, even in the stillness, even in the midst of what feels like an ending, something new is beginning. And it is in the waiting that you will be shaped. It is in the quiet that your strength will be forged. It is in the moments when you feel like you cannot go on that your endurance will be built. Because you are not being prepared for something small. You are not being positioned for something ordinary. No, what is coming will require a strength you do not yet know you have, a wisdom you have not yet fully grasped, a resilience that only this season could produce within you. The waiting is uncomfortable. The stretching is painful. The process is not easy, but it is necessary, because when you are finally standing on the other side of this, when the doors open, when the restoration comes, when the abundance that was always meant for you finally arrives, you will not just be stepping into something new, you will be stepping into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. And that fullness cannot be rushed, it cannot be forced, it cannot be fabricated by clinging to what was never meant to remain. No, it must be cultivated in the soil of patience, in the fires of endurance, in the depths of trust, because only when you have been refined by the process will you be ready to carry the weight of what is to come. So do not resist the process. Do not despise the waiting. Do not let the pain of this season convince you that it was all for nothing. Because nothing is wasted, not the tears, not the losses, not the long nights of wondering why. Every piece of it is working together to shape you, to prepare you, to position you for what is ahead. And what is ahead will make sense of every moment you thought you would not survive. It will answer the questions that haunt you now. It will reveal why certain doors had to close, why certain people had to leave, why certain seasons had to end. And when that revelation comes, when the fullness of it is finally before you, you will not mourn what you lost. You will marvel at what was always waiting for you. But until then, keep going, keep believing, keep trusting that this is not the end of your story, because the best chapters are still being written. The greatest moments are still unfolding, and what is coming is greater than anything you have yet imagined. And one day, when you look back on this season, you will not see it as the time when everything fell apart. No, you will see it as the time when everything was being put together. You will see it as the moment when the foundation was laid, when the pieces were rearranged, when the preparation was completed, and you will know beyond any doubt that what you thought was an ending was actually the greatest beginning of your life. There is a breaking that happens before the building, a tearing down before the rising. And though it feels like destruction, though it feels like devastation, it is only the clearing away of what can no longer remain. There are some things too small for your future, some weights too heavy for your journey, some attachments too fragile to withstand the magnitude of where you are headed. So they had to be stripped away, not because you were being abandoned, but because you were being prepared. Preparation rarely looks like what we expect. We imagine doors flinging open, paths unfolding easily, the next step appearing with clarity and certainty. But preparation often comes dressed as loss. It comes wrapped in endings, in detours, in the quiet unraveling of everything familiar. It does not always announce itself as progress. Sometimes it feels like moving backward. Sometimes it feels like standing still. But even in the stillness, even in what appears to be regression, something is happening. There is a refining taking place. There is a strengthening, a stretching, a deepening of who you are. You may not see it yet, but there are parts of you that are growing in this season, parts of you that are being fortified, parts of you that will be necessary for the next chapter of your life. And though the process is uncomfortable, though the waiting is long, it is not in vain. You are not being forgotten. You are not being overlooked. You are not being cast aside while others move forward. No, you are being prepared in ways you cannot yet understand. There are lessons you are learning now that will sustain you later. There are wounds being healed now that would have crippled you had they remained. There are things being worked out in the unseen places, things that would have hindered you had they not been addressed. And one day, when you step into what has been prepared for you, you will be grateful for this season. You will look back and see that what felt like loss was actually making room. But for now, the process continues, the stretching continues, the waiting continues. And in the waiting, there is a choice to be made, a choice to trust that even though you cannot see the full picture, it is still being painted. A choice to believe that even though the road ahead is unclear, the path is still being laid. A choice to keep moving forward even when you do not understand, even when nothing makes sense, even when everything in you wants to turn back, because turning back is not an option. What was is no longer. The past cannot hold you anymore. You have outgrown it. You have been called higher. You have been set apart for something greater, something beyond what your eyes can currently see. And though it may be tempting to cling to what is familiar, to reach for what is comfortable, you cannot stay where you were. You cannot build your future with the remnants of your past. So release it. Release the need to understand every detail. Release the need for immediate answers. Release the belief that everything must be clear before you take the next step. Because clarity often comes in the movement. Understanding often comes in the journey. And what is ahead of you will not be found by standing still. The road will not always be easy. There will still be days when doubt creeps in, when fear whispers that you have been forgotten, when impatience tries to convince you that nothing is happening. But remember this, preparation does not always announce itself. Growth is often silent. Transformation happens beneath the surface where the eye cannot see. And just because you cannot measure the progress does not mean it is not happening. You see, it was never about the things you lost. It was never about the people who walked away. It was never about the doors that closed. It was always about what was being built within you. It was always about the growth, the stretching, the deepening of your spirit. Because the truth is, if you had held on to what was, you would have never made room for what could be. If you had clung to the familiar, you would have never stepped into the unknown. And it is in the unknown that the greatest transformations take place. At first, it is uncomfortable. It is disorienting. It is a journey through unfamiliar territory where the old rules no longer apply and the old paths no longer lead anywhere. And for a time, you may feel as though you are wandering without direction, as though you are moving but not making progress. But the truth is, every step, no matter how uncertain, is part of the journey. Every moment of waiting, every moment of questioning, every moment of discomfort is serving a purpose greater than you can currently understand. And then one day, without warning, something shifts. The doors that were once closed begin to open. The path that once seemed invisible begins to unfold. The questions that once tormented you begin to make sense. And when that moment comes, you will realize that you did not arrive here by accident. You did not stumble into this new place. You were led here. Every loss, every setback, every detour, it was all guiding you toward this. And in that moment, you will see that what you thought was the breaking was actually the making. What you thought was rejection was actually protection. What you thought was the end was actually the beginning of something far greater than you ever imagined. But you could not have seen it then. You could not have understood it in the midst of the loss. Because some things can only be understood in hindsight when you have finally arrived at the place you were always meant to be. So do not mourn what is gone. Do not grieve for what had to be left behind. Do not waste time looking back, wishing for what was, longing for what could have been. Instead, lift your eyes forward, because what is ahead of you is greater than anything you have lost. What is being prepared for you will far exceed what was taken from you. And when you finally step into it, you will realize that nothing was wasted. Not the pain, not the waiting, not the moments of despair. It was all leading you here. And here in this new place, you will understand why you had to lose everything. You will understand why the breaking was necessary. You will understand why the old life could not contain the new one that was waiting for you. And when you finally stand in the fullness of it all, you will not wish to return to what was. Because what is finally yours was always greater than you ever imagined. And so when you look back on the journey, when you trace the path from the breaking to the becoming, you will see that nothing was wasted. You will see that every loss carved out space for something greater. Every unanswered question led you to a deeper understanding. Every closed door redirected you towards something far more fulfilling. You will realize that what once felt like devastation was actually preparation, that the emptiness was not a void, but a clearing, making room for the abundance that was always meant for you. And when you finally step into what was waiting all along, you will no longer grieve what was lost, you will rejoice in what was gained, because you will know with unwavering certainty that nothing was taken from you that wasn't meant to be replaced with something greater. You were not abandoned. You are being prepared for more.